Sarah knew the place where Fega lived, her only sister and true friend. It was empty, near Fega's house, and it's never empty when there was a family with children. Sarah knocked on the door. "I'm looking for Fega, my older sister," she said to the strange woman who opened the door. She lived here before the war with her husband, 3 daughters, parents, and sister-in-law. "I don't know who lived here before the war. I moved here recently, after we came back from evacuation." "Sarah?" she heard behind her back. Sarah turned around and saw a next-door neighbor, Nina. "I was wondering when somebody from your family would come." She rushed to Sarah and hugged her tight. "Come in, dear." She pushed the door wide open to let Sarah into her apartment. When Sarah entered, the first things she saw were Fega's bookshelves and curtains. Sarah froze in the middle of the room. "These are Fega's things," she said in distress, turning around to face Nina. Nina hid her glance with embarrassment. "They were gone anyway, Sarah. The apartment was empty for several weeks. Random people came and robbed it, Sarah. So, I also took something, just for the memory." Sarah silently looked at the woman, not believing her own ears. "Sarah, you'd better sit down." "Oh. Dear. Over here." She walked Sarah to the kitchen. Sit. I'll give you something." "Tea?" Sarah sat down on a chair, feeling nothing. "Please don't be mad at me. If you want, I'll give you everything I took from their apartment." "I don't feel ashamed that I took it, Sarah." When Fritz came, everything disappeared so rapidly, first, the people, and then, their things. Empty apartments were vandalized so badly, you wouldn't believe it if you saw it for yourself. It felt like I didn't live among the people anymore, but among the pack of wolves. Also, there is no animal that behaves like some people do. I came to their apartment to check it out, and I took all that was left. After all, it would disappear anyway. I found a photo album and took that too. I thought you might come back, so I saved it for you." Sarah raised her eyes at Nina, full of tears. "Oh, Sarah. Why are you so quiet? It's okay to cry. Please. Don't just look at me." Sarah kept silent. Nina opened her closet, moved a chair, and stood on it to reach to the top shelf where she kept her picture albums. She got down and opened it in front of Sarah on the table. "Where is Fega?" Sarah finally asked. Her voice was trembling. "Where are the children?" "What? Nobody told you?" "No." "Oh. Dear, I don't want to be the one who brings it to you. I saw so many terrible, unspeakable things that I can't even speak about them, Sarah. They're gone, Sarah. Gone. I just want to go to their grave." Sarah didn't believe her own words. "Oh, dear, there is no grave. They're all in the well." Fega, her 3 daughters, 13-year-old Jane, 6-year-old Beria, and 3-year-old Alexandra, along with her parents-in-law and Yalta, all stayed home when Hitler's army occupied the city. The Germans hung posters everywhere, calling Jews to come to a certain place with their warm clothes, valuables, and documents. The family had no idea what was going to happen to them, and followed along. All the Jews from the town were uncertain and scared. Some assumed that the Germans were going to take them to Germany because Jews and Germans were blood brothers. Some were ready for the worst, watching how calm and organized the Germans were, holding their machine guns and restrained dogs. However, nobody could imagine how bad things were about to get. Suddenly, Fega saw Celia with her children, 7-year-old Gregory, and 4-year-old Ada, in the crowd. "Hi, Celia." Fega came close to her. "Hey. Do you know what's going on?" "I've no idea, hopefully nothing bad. I think they need warm clothes for their army and just want to register whoever made donations." "But why just the Jews?" "I don't know. God be with us." The Germans confiscated the people's belongings, then separated the men and walked them away, and finally, ordered the women and children to take off their clothes, giving some dull explanation. The people panicked, but reluctantly obeyed. Fega was embarrassed to take her clothes off in front of her children and public. She hesitated, but not for too long. The soldiers pointed their guns at anyone who didn't follow the orders, and the people obeyed. Fega's daughters watched her undressing and did the same. They were scared and quiet and looked at their mother with a silent question, "What's happening?" Sadly, she couldn't answer because she didn't know either. She stood there naked and humiliated, covering herself with her hands. The soldiers ordered people to get into a line and walk. Townspeople watched from the side of the road. Some of them were stunned, some curious, and others grinned. A group of Ukrainian teenage boys laughed out loud, pointing at the naked women and girls. Then, the people were stopped in front of a well that was on the roadside. It was deep, with clear cold water and a brass well barrel that was swinging in the light wind on a rope. A soldier grabbed one child at the beginning of the line and threw him into the well. His mother screamed in horror, ran after her child, and jumped into the well to rescue him. The soldier snickered menacingly, "That was surprisingly easy." Panic snatched the people. It was too late to run away, but they were too young to die. Fega gasped as she saw Gregory running away from the crowd. A giant hound was chasing after him. The dog jumped on the boy and sank its teeth into his shoulder. He fell down on the cold ground, screaming. His naked body was quickly soaked in his own blood as the dog tore him apart. Celia started after Gregory, weeping. At the same time, another soldier grabbed Ada and threw her into the well. Celia ran back to the well, weeping even harder, and in a moment, she disappeared into the dark hole in the earth. The soldiers threw children into the well one by one, and the mothers voluntarily jumped in after them. A woman screamed behind Fega's back, making Fega turn around. A pregnant woman bent down in pain. Her old mother helped her to her knees. "She's in labor. Help. Somebody. Please." A German came close, and the next second, the old woman was lying on the ground with a broken skull from the butt of the German's machine gun. Her pregnant daughter wept in disbelief. Then, the sound of horror turned into a scream from the terrible pain of labor. She collapsed on the ground, right next to her dead mother. A German soldier ordered her to get up, but she couldn't, and continued screaming. He stabbed her with a bayonet, and the scream suddenly dissolved with the sound of the terrified crowd. She was still alive, rolling her eyes in labor pain. The German grabbed her by the hand and dragged to the well. Suddenly, her stomach collapsed, and a crying baby was born. "Give it to me." Fega heard a Ukrainian woman cry from the outside of the condemned crowd. "Please, give me the baby." However, this cry melted away in the Germans yelping, dogs barking, and the shouting of the condemned people. Another soldier grabbed Alexandra. Fega held her little daughter very tightly and would never let her go. A blur kicked Fega in the stomach so hard that her spirit seemed to go out of her. She cringed, holding her stomach with one hand, gasping for air in a world suddenly gone into a vacuum, and still clutching Alexandra's hand. She bent down in pain and saw that the baby was still connected to its mother by an umbilical cord and was being dragged by the German to the well. The placenta detached, and the baby lay on the ground alone, crying. "Give me the baby." The cry reached Fega's ears again as she felt the small hand slip away from her grasp. She heard her daughters scream, and in front of her eyes, all three of them disappeared into the well. She caught her breath, ran to the well, and gazed inside. There were bodies, hands, legs, and heads waiting in the deep dark water, but Fega couldn't recognize which figures belonged to her children. The baby fell down the well, and the placenta followed. In a split second, Fega was hurtling down inside the well walls. It felt like millions of needles were piercing her body as she made contact with the freezing water. Numbness went through her body, but she had just one thought: the children. Someone's hands grabbed her and pushed her down into the water. Fega frantically held on to the side of a wall. The weeping and sobbing tore through her ears, and the freezing water painfully chilled her body. The next moment, she found herself engulfed by the water under some other bodies that were thrown on top of her. She tried to move up, but there wasn't enough space, and the bodies were too heavy. Strength left her, and soon her mind went blank. The Germans didn't want to waste bullets on the Jews. Children and weak women couldn't get out of the well and soon drowned. The strongest tried to get out, but as soon as they reached the top of the well, the Germans pushed them back in with the butts of their machine guns, breaking their bones. For 2 weeks, the Ukrainian townspeople heard wails and yelps for help from the guarded well. That help never came, and in 2 weeks, it was over. The death well was silent.